Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Wake the Future. This week we wanted to revisit one of the core concepts that we talk about here, and it's called pilot versus passenger. It's one of the first things we did an episode on, and basically pilot versus passenger is at the heart of the agency piece of human A plus I that we talk about as being so essential in the future. And the reason we want to talk about this today was precipitated by you and I watching one of our favorite shows, Real Time with Bill Maher, and he had Ryan Holiday on last week, and Ryan Holiday was the author of the book, The Daily Stoic, and he's converted that into a whole content platform, a podcast, etc. I was only loosely familiar with the Daily Stoic, but I love the conversation they had because it is all about revisiting the ancient Greek wisdom, going back thousands of years, of Stoicism. We tend to have a certain notion in our minds in modern society of what Stoicism means, but ultimately it is part of an ancient wisdom that is being revisited now, is really, really important, and I think it's worth talking about here today.
Yeah, so let's go back to your whole pilot versus passenger, because this is what underpins a lot of this conversation, which really comes down to control and separating out what it is that you can control versus what it is that you cannot control. So in my mind, as I've even learned more about Stoicism with a capital S, and for me, I'm like, how is this different from being Stoic? Right. And I even dug into that because I didn't really know that there was much of a difference initially until I started learning more about the concept. And, in my head, I'm like, okay, being Stoic is just kind of emotionally flatline or having a wall up. But going back to your point about ancient Greek, Stoicism, capital S, that's a very different discipline, kind of rooted in human wisdom, rooted in human agency. And all of the things to just kind of almost take an aerial view to look down at your life and be like, all right, what is it? It's almost like a grounding exercise. It's like, what is it that is in my locus of control? And what can I then just let go of? So it's no surprise that this is gaining a lot of traction with a lot of people.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this is when we started talking about pilot versus passenger, I don't think we thought that we were being revolutionary in our thinking, but we were trying to simplify a concept which I think is lost on a lot of people today. And what's interesting to me, what's informative to me at least, and I think you and I share in this, is finding out that there is an ancient wisdom that is built all around this idea, and it's having a resurgence now, and it is not a coincidence. So the bottom line is that Stoicism, as an ancient kind of wisdom, taught that there are certain things that are within our control and certain things that are not in our control. That is the essence of pilot-passenger. And what it taught was to stop focusing so much energy and time, your resources, your bandwidth, your energy, on things that you can't control because all it'll do is consume you. So how do you refocus your energy on those things you can control and have agency over?
And I think a lot of people are obviously searching for this, even though it's so much easier said than done.
Right, exactly.
Right, there are so many, it's like, don't sweat the small stuff. And even as I tell myself in my own life, don't sweat the small stuff. Like you were driving in the car with me today as I'm yelling at slow drivers and I think I can control them by tailgating them. And that's not the case. But I also
you actually achieve the opposite effect because they get nervous because they see you behind and they get even slower in their Subarus.
I own the road.
She does. She definitely is like the boss of the road. And that's one of the things that drew me to her.
But I like to think of myself, right, as someone who, you're going to laugh, but someone who is...
I'm already laughing. I don't even know what you're going to say.
But someone who is mindful.
Mindful. You're a lot of wonderful things. I mean, I could list 100 great attributes. Mindful, not really one of them. But go ahead. A little peek into the inner workings of this relationship. Go ahead. No, continue your thought. Mindful.
So I try to practice some of these things. And I took yoga this morning, right? And we ended with a relaxation and a meditation. But it is hard to take those things and apply them in all areas of your life. And now I do understand why people are attracted to this philosophy. And I do understand why it is, being unearthed from thousands of years and kind of coming back into the mainstream consciousness because everybody is looking for some sense of control. We talk all the time about the fact that people, including ourselves, right, are so disoriented. It's confusing out there. There's so much noise. Things are moving so quickly. Then you throw AI in there and then you're like, how do I parent? And we're all in a tornado.
We are. And what's interesting about this, you just gave a great example. It's very easy.
Mindful?
Well, I mean, you're a great case study of one. It's very easy for people to be mindful or attempt to be mindful episodically in moments. How do you carry that through though? So that when you leave your mindful space, you're not going right back to the kind of uncontrollable stress of what's around you, those external variables. So I think this is what the Stoics were getting at thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius, all this great stuff. Let's give examples. When we talk about pilot passenger, we talk about the fact that so many people right now are consumed with politics. They're consumed with with local politics, with national politics, with what's going on in our government, with what's going on in wars around the world. And also people are getting consumed with what's going to happen to my future and my kids' future because of artificial intelligence. Now listen, we spend a lot of time talking about those things on here. And it doesn't mean they're not worth talking about. But if you understand that you are not individually going to have any real control over those things, then you have to refocus on the things that are in your life that you can control. And I think it changes your whole frame of mind. It makes you more mindful. It shifts your resources to those things you can affect. It gives you a greater sense of empowerment and agency. So while we may not be able to affect the direction of artificial intelligence, we can affect our response to it. We can think about how are we going to keep our house in order.
But do you think that this is generational? So I was reading an article in MIT Technology Review recently, and it was all around Gen Z's response to, quote, the polycrises. The fact that they are living in this world and they have grown up in this world with COVID just being one domino of many, where everything to them is a macro crisis. So eco-anxiety, everything that you just mentioned, political polarization, social media echo chambers. A lot of Gen Z are really concerned about AI and its environmental effects, water, all of these things. And it is having a pointed effect on their mental health.
I think that's why this is happening right now.
Now, do you think that Stoicism is attracting older generations, or do you think that more in Gen Z are being attracted to this philosophy as they search for meaning and purpose?
I don't know the demographic breakdown of this right now. I don't know, we could talk to Ryan Holiday and say, who are your listeners? The fact is, this is a very anxious generation. We know this. It's Jonathan Haidt's book. Yeah. So, and they're anxious about everything. And a lot of bad things have happened to them. But here's the thing. That generation is going to have to adapt to this kind of mindset eventually. Because instead of living their whole lives like they've been affected by,
it's
almost
very,
like a victim mentality, even though I don't blame them.
Vulcan mind meld.
No, I don't blame them for this, because you can't blame a generation for COVID messing up the formative years of their life. You can't blame a generation for the fact that half of them are not going to have normal employment. But if you can start to figure out a different way to conceptualize those things so it's not completely deleterious to your everyday existence, where you're like, okay, these things are happening whether I do anything about them or not. Now I have to affect my mindset. The whole reason we did this, the gestalt behind this rebranding and repositioning of what we do as futurists, is so that we can try to have conversations with normal people about, you're not going to be able to control all of this. Where do you have agency? It is modern Stoicism.
But as an offshoot of agency is why we call this Wake the Future to begin with, which is about awakening to all of these different parts of ourselves as well. And I think that's a core aspect to it, because if you are kind of in this victim mentality of, everything is happening to me, it's a very almost woe is me. I was born at one of the worst times in human history, which course correct, you weren't. Take some agency, but have the awareness to then have this kind of worldview. And maybe it comes with age. Maybe it's something that should be taught to younger and younger kids, where they are able, a lot of this is about emotional self-regulation, to self-regulate how you choose to respond. We all have a choice in how we choose to respond to what's happening in our macro and what's happening in our micro. Right. And I think one of the reasons that this is gaining such traction is that people are looking for something to ground them. And I think that this is a hugely positive trend that comes out of something that is just in a time of flux. We're in a time of massive flux.
I think it's exceptionally positive. I mean, a few things based on what you just said. Number one, I do think that this is a kind of discipline that should be introduced in some way that is approachable and understandable to children from a very early age.
I mean, SEL was social emotional learning.
This is part of that. This is like the next evolution of that. Number two, I don't think that older people are more receptive to this or more immune from the counter. In some cases, we know people in our own lives who are older than us who can't get out of their own way, being consumed by things happening, for example, politically, because they've been conditioned to get angrier and angrier based on what they see in their echo chambers on social media. I think this applies to all age groups. I think that there is more anxiety more broadly among Gen Z, but that doesn't change the fact that everyone's going to need to think about this. Then we go back to the realization that there was a lot of wisdom a long, long time ago. We talk about this in other areas of life. Ancient wisdom. It's a thing. Modern society and all of the advancements we've made technologically and otherwise have in some ways coached out a lot of the inherent wisdom that people used to have. And a lot of the lessons that we've brought forward politically, societally, culturally today were born out of things that were identified thousands of years ago. So this is another example of ancient wisdom.
Things that even predate the ancient Greek philosophers.
Absolutely.
So even going back to the mystics and mysticism and the Sumerians, the Kabbalists, the Egyptians, there was a wisdom and there was a connection to the cosmos, to the ether, to the energy. And this is not to get like very esoteric about this, but it is to say that there was just, it's the difference I always say between having knowledge and knowing.
Yeah.
And they had a deep knowing. And in a time now when information is abundant, we are living in a time where knowledge is right there. It's like almost the world can be accessed in a matter of seconds.
Yep.
Now we're in that shift towards how do we tap deeper into that sense of knowing.
And knowledge and wisdom are two very different things. And to your point, knowledge is a commodity now.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence can reproduce knowledge in a fraction of a second. Wisdom is something that I think is still a uniquely human trait. It's uniquely within the human purview. And if you go back to the Stoicism of thousands of years ago and what the core of what Ryan Holiday is doing with the Daily Stoic, it is all about wisdom. I think it's even in the subtitle of his book.
Yeah.
Now, there are some common themes. I think our pilot versus passenger idea, where you want to focus on the micro things where you can be the pilot versus the macro themes where you're purely a passenger and have no control. I think the commonality is the idea that we identify those things and we cleave them into two. What can we control? What can't we control? I think another common point is this idea of human wisdom. I think that these are the two real connective threads between what we're talking about in contemporary times and what Ryan Holiday is bringing back to the forefront with ancient Stoicism. There are some, not disconnects, but what he does focuses much more on like a daily meditative practice. We're not in the business here of telling people to meditate or pretending that we understand how to lead meditations. I think that there are more pragmatic things that people can do consciously and psychologically on a day-to-day basis to start to build up walls to protect themselves and to apply more wisdom separate from, it might be in conjunction with, but doesn't have to necessarily be just doing mindfulness exercises like meditation.
So I've said this before, and I start almost all of my presentations this way, and I will show an image of a Rorschach test, like the old ink blot tests. And I will make the point that everything comes down to one single thing, and that is perspective. Yeah. So a lot of this conversation is a massive perspective shift. And I will make the point that like everything that they are hearing, some might view through like a very utopian lens or a dystopian lens, but I'm giving people the same content. It's how they choose to view it and how they choose to view their role as a pilot or as a passenger. So those that view themselves as being an active participant in shaping the future will create a very different future than that person that views themselves as, oh, the future is just happening to me. I'm going to take a back seat. I'm a victim in this. Things are feeling too fast, and then the walls go up. Yeah. So I think a large part of Stoicism, through the lens of our A+I framework, so it's through the lens of agency and identity, comes down to perspective. And when you read about this kind of like new Stoicism, one of the things that they will say is that if you take a different perspective, where basically if you view your life and like what you are stressed out about, and this is something that I need to do,
we all
right?
need to do
like
it.
we all need to do this, where it's like if you almost like levitate up and you're like, all right, now I'm looking at my house. Now I'm looking at my town. Now I'm looking at my city, my state, my country. Oh, the planet. Oh, the galaxy, right? It's like you're zooming out, and you realize just how kind of insignificant a lot of these like day-to-day stressors are, even though they feel so effing big to us in those moments. Like, you know, the things that I stress out about day to day. And I mean, this would be a great practice for someone like me who gets like just annoyed by little things. Yeah. Or it could be big things and like life, work, parenthood, you, whatever it is.
First of all, a couple of things.
I put you last.
No, thank you. I'm glad that I'm last on your list of constant annoyances. That's great. I mean, it makes me feel like a backhanded compliment. But there are a couple of things there. First of all, I never knew that you sat around and started to zoom out and picture yourself above the galaxy.
I haven't really done this.
Oh, okay. You were making it sound like you do this. I was like, you're above the universe?
This is what the new
I'm learning new things
Stoicism
about you after 27 years.
As a practice.
Okay, I was going to say.
Which I think is very interesting.
It's very interesting. I was saying I'm learning new things about you after 27 years.
We should do this.
Let's do this. Now, here's the other thing. When we talk about, you can't take these two things as mutually exclusive. So we can't just be absolute and say we are a single entity that is unaffected by things around us. And we also can't just say that we are inextricably linked to everything around us. It's kind of in between. The Buddhists had an ancient wisdom too, where they basically had a concept, and I believe the Kabbalists did as well. Maybe the Hindus, I don't know, but I know the Buddhists did, where it was what is big is little, what is little is big. Like everything in the universe is in us. Like at the cellular level, the micro is the macro. And what's interesting about that is that it kind of relates here because it's the idea that, of course, we're going to be impacted by everything happening around us. The question is, how do we metabolically respond to it? And I think that's where we're at a crossroads in 2026. There is the macro. We are part of that fabric. We are connected to all of it. The question is, how, as we live this existence, do we not internalize all of that stress and anxiety? And that's why the modern word stoic is derived from this. Because stoicism is about governing your emotions. And in governing your emotions and doing this kind of meditative work, you end up in a state where you don't seem as affected by things. And we tend to view that today as a negative. Like someone is too stoic, it means that they're not showing a lot of emotion. But maybe there's a middle ground. And so honestly, this is a conversation worth having. And I do think that pilot versus passenger, understanding what you can control, what you can't control, and then reorganizing your perspective and life around it that way so that you have the maximum human agency in the future is one of the critical things we can reemphasize over and over again.
So here is one, at least from my perspective, one very simple thing that you can do. And you know how I love talking about just picking up a pen and a piece of paper because it helps us think. It helps us clarify our thinking. And I would even just have 2 columns. And it could be that which is in my control and that which is not. And just kind of have a self-audit. Keep lists so that you can actively go back to those lists and be like, okay, how can I like even ground out the stress, like ground it out because I cannot control any of these things. How in this column can I change my perspective or change my thinking around something if it is in my control? And I think it's just helpful, at least for me, to just see it written in 2 columns and then to even have a conversation, right, around your dinner table. If your kids have any interest in having this conversation, I think the more that we can start having these conversations at younger and younger ages with our kids, the better, to have them understand too. Like, these are ways to mitigate your stress or your anxiety because this you can control, but this you cannot.
And I also think that there is, and not in an ethereal way, in a very basic way, an energy component to this. I think if we can build up a membrane around us that absorbs some of the negative energy coming in from around us, and energy doesn't just dissipate, it has to go somewhere. If we can take that energy that comes through our membrane and rechannel it into agency on things that we can control. This is us taking agency over our families. This is entrepreneurial agency. A lot of people who really want to start things up that make a positive difference. This has personal and professional ramifications to it. So I think we just have to change our mindset. So I really appreciate all of you joining us today. This is a really cool conversation, a little bit different in tone than some of our others. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please, as always, stay tuned for our episode next Tuesday, same time, same place. Like, subscribe, share, follow, all that fun stuff. And please go to our website, wakethefuture.com, and join our mailing list. And we will talk to all of you soon.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, like, follow, and subscribe to stay ahead of what's next. I'm Erica Orange.
And I'm Jared Weiner. Thanks for waking the future with us. We'll see you next time.